Chapter 5. This is where he goes shopping for his items. Harry woke early the next morning, although he could tell it was daylight. He kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I will be at home in my own cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking, but he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, 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 tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Rapping. Harry scrambled to his feet. So happy, he felt as though a large balloon was swelling up inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on, savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl! Pay him, Harry grunted in the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look at the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 nuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Nuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money into the small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the open window. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn any magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah. First stop for us is Gringotts, Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold. And I would say no, and I wouldn't say so to a bit of a birthday cake either. Wizards have banks? Harry asked. Just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, so you'd be mad if you tried to rob it. I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyway. for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets me to do something important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting these things from Gringotts, knows that he can trust me. Got everything? Come on, then. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. I flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah. We'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now. I gotcha, eh? They settled down in the boat, and Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. Seems a shame for you to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. If I were to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hagrid's? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapping it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off toward land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells, enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding the highest security vaults, and then you got to find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, you see. Deep under the London Underground. You'd die of hunger trying to figure it out, and even if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this for a while. Hagrid read the newspaper, the Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this. But it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life before. Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked, before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for Ministry of Magic. Of course, but he never would leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler if ever there was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. But what does Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Asked Harry. Why? Blimey, Harry, everybody would be wanting magic solutions to solve their problems. Nah, we'd just best leave them alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passersby stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anybody else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up, eh?" Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit to keep up. "Did you say there are dragons at Gringotts?" "Well, so they say," said Hagrid. "Crikey, I'd like a dragon." "You would like one?" "Wanted one ever since I was a kid." "Here we go." They had reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, gave the bills to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. "Still got your letter, Harry?" he asked as he counted the stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. "Good. There's a list there of everything you need." Harry unfolded a second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform, just like you. First-year students will require 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 plain pointed hat, black. For day wear, 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or something similar. 1 winter coat, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following: The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. And 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Philida Spore. That's funny. Magical Dwarfs and Potions by Arsenius Jigger. Here's the list. It's actually quite funny. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Schmader. A Dark Focus, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Tribble. Other equipment needed: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size, 2, 1 set glass of crystal filials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales, and students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. Can we go buy all this in London? If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before, although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going. He was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in a ticket barrier in the underground, which is like a subway, and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains were too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said, as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up the bustling road-lined shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep up with him, behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger restaurants and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if you could sell a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not be all some sort of huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help but trust him. "This is it," said Hagrid, coming to a halt. "The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place." It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't even glance at it. Their eyes slid from the bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they didn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Harry could see it. Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. "Hagrid," they waved and smiled at him. The bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid." "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. Can it be?" The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter. What an honor." He scurried out from behind the bar, rushed toward Harry, and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter! Welcome back!" Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the Leaky Cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all aflutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Daedalus Diggle. I've seen you before," said Harry, as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off in excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers," said Daedalus Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me." Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for one more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell. will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? Defense against the dark arts, muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, Potter. He laughed nervously. You'll be getting all the equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. Must get on. Lots to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into the small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a trash can and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you you'd be famous. Even Professor Quirrell wasn't trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. Is he always that nervous? Oh, yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine. He was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met some vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been there same since he met these people. Scared of all the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's me umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the trash can. 3 up, 2 across. Right. Stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick had touched, quivered, it wriggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid. An archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight.